distinguished colleague, the gentlelady from Florida, held up a poster board saying we should hold Hunter Biden in contempt because of a provision saying refusal of a witness to testify. But that doesn't apply in that we have a witness that was here and is willing to testify. Now, I'll give everybody credit here. There seems to be disagreement about whether to do the closed-door deposition, but there is an area of agreement. And the area of agreement is to have a public hearing. And so what I'm interested in, I'll yield a minute of time over to you, Chairman, or somebody from the other side. We've been here for hours, and I have still yet to figure out why we don't have Mr. Hunter Biden here to answer our questions for whatever period of time we want in front of the Oversight Committee. So I want to understand. I want to give Mr. Fallon due credit from the great state of Texas for saying, well, he wants to make sure we have enough time. Mr. Chairman, I'm sure we could agree to whatever amount of time was necessary, but I'm having a lot of trouble understanding why the Republican majority won't take yes for an answer and ask questions of Hunter Biden here publicly. That I think we would really learn, because all I've been hearing on TV news is over and over again that we need to ask Hunter Biden questions. He's saying we can. Why refuse to have this public hearing that it sounds like?
Are you yielding me?
Yeah, I'm happy to yield you 30 seconds.
So we've obtained thousands of pages of bank documents. We've reviewed 170 suspicious activity reports from banks filed against the Bidens. From my banking background, that's unprecedented to have that many bank violations that allege very serious things, from money laundering to tax evasion to bribery. And we have a lot of questions. We want to treat him like any other witness. He doesn't get to set the rules. We will depose him. And look, we split time with Democrats. You all get an equal amount of time with Hunter Biden. Then we'll have a public hearing.
But I guess my question is, if there is disagreement, and it sounds like there is, around the deposition, why not have the public hearing?
We will after the deposition.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, but nobody has explained to me clearly yet. And I think to your own districts, to my district, why not call Hunter Biden in tomorrow? Why not ask him in next week? We're ready.
Well, gentlemen, yield. I'd love to answer that question.
Yes,
yeah, so I would have loved to have deposed him right here today.
We had a motion. We had a motion.
You have 3 days.
Let's do it in 3 days.
No, but my whole point is behind closed doors. I would have gone right now. He's here. He's got his legal representation there. Let's play this game. But we have rules that say you have 3 days.
I'm not playing game one. I'm sure we could waive the 3 days. Second, we could have it here in 3 days if there's agreement about if what we're hearing from the Republican side over and over and over again is they've got questions for Hunter Biden. The quotes from this hearing. Hunter Biden's testimony is critical. I want to delve into questions I have for Mr. Biden. Why not ask for those? Why not ask for that tomorrow? Because
the deposition tomorrow?
No, we would have him here in public tomorrow in front of everyone.
I
understand you're saying after the deposition, but my question for you is just very clearly, why not have the public hearing tomorrow?
Will the gentleman yield to that question?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, if
and
you
Mr.
may.
Donalds, I want to compliment you because I remember our first Oversight Committee hearing, you said it would be good to have these real conversations, so I genuinely
I am all for this, Mr. Kassar. I actually enjoy this part if we ever get to it. Look, the reality is, and you have attorneys on your side of the aisle, there is never any proceeding that takes place without a deposition of the witness. The reason why is because if something comes up in the round of questioning, either A, members of this committee may not be prepared because they don't have all the information from the witness, because the witness was never given an opportunity with his attorneys present to actually give out that level of information. So you need the deposition process before you bring a witness into open hearing. This happens all the time. This is actually the protocol of the House. And Mr. Kassar, what your side of the aisle is requesting, with all due respect, is a deviation from the historical precedent of the House of Representatives.
I'll yield back to the ranking member.
Well, but thank you for moving the ball forward with that explanation. That has been the practice sometimes, not all times. The vast majority of witnesses who come before this committee come without being deposed first. We come and ask for their testimony. But in any event, even for a witness who's being subpoenaed, like Mr. Biden was, we have a completely different situation when the chairman goes out publicly and says, we will give you the choice, A or B. You can have a deposition or you can come in the hearing, but I challenge you, I invite you, I insist that you come before the committee, and repeatedly says that. So that's why I think legally it's a very complex question, but I don't see why we take this all the way to the all the way to court. If you guys really want to hear from him, let's have a public hearing and then depose him afterwards. But he's saying he doesn't want to be misrepresented. Thank you for yielding.
Time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Burleson from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What should be obvious to the American people, what I think we need to just say to the American people is to point out that this kind of food fight, this circus that we've experienced is the reason why we want to have a deposition. In a deposition, you don't get people distracting the American public with all these other topics. And during a deposition, they don't get to lie to the American people for 5 minutes at a time. They don't get to distract, they don't get to lie, and they don't get to divert from the facts of what's happening. But what I see happening is what's being telegraphed here is that they're building a case, a political case, really, because that's what this is. It's all politics that they're entering into for why the Department of Justice, or giving Merrick Garland an excuse, which we all knew that he would not prosecute, probably not prosecute these contempt charges, because it would be hypocritical if he did so. He would, because he prosecuted Steve Bannon, even though Bannon was actually working for the president, and was able to raise the speech and debate clause that was mentioned in the Constitution. Merrick Garland still prosecuted him for that. Here's what's really frustrating to the American people, and they see right through this. We're now going through a second process over really the same crimes that were committed when Joe Biden was vice president. And those crimes include the creation of dozens and dozens of limited liability companies, dozens of bank accounts. When people say, where are the facts? Well, I want to ask, what facts are you looking for? Because to me, bank records are facts. Suspicious activity reports are facts. Copies of checks are facts. When you juxtapose that with the WhatsApp message and what's on the Hunter Biden laptop and the deposition from witnesses like Mr. Archer, when you add to it further depositions, as we're going to hear about soon, the art dealer, when you layer all that together, that's a compelling story. There's a lot of facts. And you know what? I would hate to be on the other side of the aisle and try to defend this situation. And so I think that the only outcome would be to distract, to try to make this a political process. But it still stands as a fact that when the Democrats were in charge, they brought in the president's son. They brought him in multiple times, and they brought him into depositions, and he agreed. And this should be should be the takeaway message to the American people. When the Trump family was asked, when they came in and they gave depositions, the Biden family, once again, Hunter Biden feels that he's privileged. He's privileged. He doesn't have to pay taxes like everyone else. He's privileged that apparently he can traffic sex workers across the globe and get away with it. He's privileged in that he can get away with acting as a foreign advocate and be able to get away with it when other people are prosecuted and sent to jail for the very same thing. The American people see that there's two standards of justice. And when we're trying to go about the people's business in a serious manner, we end up allowing a food fight, which is exactly why he did what he did when he went across the street as far away as he could from this building and had his press conference, and then why he today showed up when the hour is way too late. I yield the remainder of my time.
Ms. Brown.
Ms. Brown. Chair recognizes Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not a lawyer, and nor do I try to pretend to play one on TV. But it is plain for all of us to see we are here on behalf of one man. the self-proclaimed dictator on day one, the twice impeached, 4 times indicted, insurrection initiator and supporter, election denier, convicted fraudster, and maniacal manipulator from Mar-a-Lago. The one who lost and lost badly. We are here because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have no positive agenda to run on. They have not accomplished one thing in their year in the majority to improve the lives of the people around this country. We are not here to hold the president in contempt of Congress. We are not even here to hold a member of President Biden's administration in contempt of Congress. For some reason, the majority has gathered us here to hold the president's son, his son, who I will remind all of us is not and has not ever been a government official, in contempt of Congress, despite his willingness to come testify publicly before this committee. So getting to the truth was never their actual goal. Instead of working together to solve big problems on behalf of the American people, my Republican colleagues continue to pursue a meritless, groundless, baseless investigation into the president's family. Meanwhile, back in my district, during our recess, I was literally dodging bullets at a funeral of a gun violence victim. And I never felt so powerless and vulnerable because I know that when I got back here, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle refused to do anything about it. Yet, they continue to make efforts to ban books, rewrite history, make it harder for people that look like me to vote, and to make it harder for women to make their own health care decisions. We see nothing on the other side of the aisle but distraction, diversion, deflection, delusion, divisiveness, and dangerous destruction of our ever so delicate democracy. So with that, I am tired of the political theater. I want to get to work for the people back home in the 11th Congressional District because they, quite frankly, don't care about Hunter Biden.
Will the gentleman
and with
yield?
that, I will yield the balance of my time to my ranking member.
Ms. Brown, thank you so much. You know, you started off by saying something pretty profound, which is we are here instead of doing the business of the American people because the Republicans have offered us no positive agenda in their year in office. We know we've wasted countless weeks in them just trying to pick a speaker. And we've wasted countless weeks with their inertia and their do-nothing policies. But, Ms. Brown, I don't know if you recall, I just don't want people having to take your word for it. I think numerous Republicans have gotten up on the floor of the House complaining about the fact that they have no agenda. I think our colleague Chip Roy from Texas said that the Republicans have not given him one thing, a single thing, I remember him saying, to campaign on. So I just want to ask you, when you're saying that they have no agenda, that's not a partisan point. You're getting that from Republicans, aren't you?
That is correct.
One of our colleagues said that there was Trump derangement syndrome, and of course, Trump derangement begins with Donald Trump himself. He thinks he has a legal right to assassinate U.S. citizens. He thinks he can grab women by their genitals, although that's not the word that he used. He said that if Joe Biden is reelected president, there will be World War II. He is obviously deranged and disoriented. But the real Trump derangement syndrome that I see is those people who cannot break from Donald Trump after he's proven himself to be completely and totally unworthy of your support. Because I'm looking at talented, gifted people on the other side of the aisle, the ones who have not left Congress in frustration or because they've broken with Donald Trump and clashed with him. But I'm still looking at people who have their wits about them, I think, but you're acting like cult members, like you're sleeping on the basement of a cult, listening to tapes all night. And I beg you to get over your Trump derangement syndrome. Thank you very much for yielding, Ms. Brown.
Chair recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First, it was said in this hearing, Mr. Chairman, about you specifically, that you repeatedly said you would give Mr. Biden any opportunity. He could choose which one to come and speak in front of this committee. He could do it by deposition. He could do it by open hearing. It was up to him. The truth of the matter, though, is that the chairman's words are not binding. Like no other member's words of Congress are really not binding. The binding article.
Point of order. Does the chairman agree with that? Point of order. Does the chairman agree?
Are you going to restore my time?
Point of order. Just point of order.
Okay.
Does the chairman agree that the chairman's words are not binding on the committee?
That's not a point of order. It has nothing to do with the order of this hearing. Thank you. Can I go back to 4 minutes and 34 seconds? That's where I was before I was interrupted by Mr. Raskin.
Yes, reset the
Thank
clock.
you. Thank you. What is binding is the actual written document, the written language in the subpoena, because a subpoena from this committee is also signed off on by the clerk of the House. That is the binding document that matters here. That is what governs. That's number one. Number two, that was said in this hearing. It was said that our witnesses said that there was no basis for an impeachment. But remember, members on the Democrat side of the aisle, what was said by Mr. Turley at the time was that there was plenty of evidence for the continuation of an impeachment inquiry. And the purpose of that hearing was the relevance basis for an impeachment inquiry. The House has now voted for an impeachment inquiry. And one of the first things that the House did after the vote of an impeachment inquiry was to subpoena Hunter Biden to appear. Hunter Biden has evaded that subpoena. So flagrantly did he evade it that he decided to show up at the Senate side to give a press conference, and Eric Swalwell, a member of the House, helped him get that time on the Senate side to give a press conference. That's a flagrant violation of a congressional subpoena. Secondarily, he has the gall to show up here when we're actually discussing contempt. And he didn't stay. He was sitting right over there. He's not here now. He said he wants to talk. He could have stayed through the whole proceeding. He chose to leave. That's his business. But he was subpoenaed to come here. Back in December, he chose not to of his own volition. He's in violation of that subpoena, a subpoena that was executed with the signature of the clerk of the House of Representatives. That is the document that is binding. That's what we work off of. Mr. Chairman, I actually want to submit for the record an article from the Hill written by Jonathan Turley, and it is titled Eric Swalwell and the Politics of Contempt.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. I'm glad something got admitted to the record. Last, a couple other points. One quick point I want to make, and this is in reference to the minority's report about this $7.8 million. I want the minority to understand one very important distinction between Presidents Biden and President Trump. President Trump has an international real estate portfolio that he has amassed over decades. I'm quite sure if you go back through all of the hotel receipts before he was president of the United States, that you had foreign dignitaries staying at Trump hotels all across the world.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'm not going to yield, Mr. Raskin. I'm making a point because they're actually very nice hotels. They look good. People like staying there. President Trump was not running the Trump Organization when he was president of the United States. To my recollection, Eric Trump, the president's son, was actually running the Trump Organization when President Trump was president of the United States. So if he had a portfolio of hotels and people choose, through Expedia, through Kayak, through hotels.com, if they choose to go and stay there, how is that the president being in violation of what the emoluments clause? That's what you're citing? Stop. Ladies and gentlemen, America, this is ridiculous. The Biden family has no business. They've never had a business except for politics. And the one thing that the Oversight Committee, in conjunction with the Ways and Means Committee and in conjunction with the Judiciary Committee, has always been able to demonstrate is that they shook down foreign nations for millions, 26 million at the latest count and growing, millions. And there was never any business entity involved except public corruption and a pay-for-play scheme. The House Oversight Committee would like to get to the bottom of this under the impeachment inquiry of the House. We have questions for Hunter Biden. We issued a subpoena for him to answer said questions. He ignored a congressional subpoena as a private citizen. There are many attorneys on the other side of the aisle If you had one of your clients in your private practice ignore a congressional subpoena as a private citizen, you would advise them not to, because they would be held in contempt and they would actually be punished by the Department of Justice. So I find that interesting.
Will the gentleman
today.
yield so I
I'm
can
not going
respond?
to yield, Mr. Goldman, because I had a question for you earlier. You didn't want to take my question, so I'm not going to take yours. Thank you. So, in closing, I will say, private citizens, yes, they have a responsibility to answer congressional subpoenas. They do. Hunter Biden had it, and he was flagrant. He decided to give a press conference. So we're going to do this business, and he should be held in contempt by the full House of Representatives. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Chair now recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C. for 5 minutes.
I yield my 5 minutes to Mr. Raskin.
I'd like to thank the distinguished delegate from the District of Columbia, and I need to correct the record because of several false statements made about the Foreign Emoluments Clause, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, although I do appreciate the gentleman from Florida's attempt to at least engage on the matter of substance that was raised so powerfully by Ms. Crockett. Now, let's start with this. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 says that neither the president nor any member of Congress can receive a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office or a title from a prince, a king, a foreign government, quote, Mr. Donald, of any kind whatever, without going to Congress first and obtaining the consent of Congress. There's no hotel exception, Mr. Donald, to the Foreign Emoluments Clause. There's no international real estate syndicate exception to the Foreign Emoluments Clause, Mr. Donald. And also, I will take you up on your challenge to see whether the Trump Hotel in Washington, the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, the Trump Hotel on Fifth Avenue, the Trump Hotel at UN Plaza, the four of the more than 500 businesses that we got documentation for, whether they actually had the same level of business coming from Saudi Arabia, the communist bureaucrats of China, who were the leading spender, as you know, if you've read our report, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, India, Egypt, and so on. We will make that comparison about what was done before if you get the chairman to call off the ban on further documents coming from Mazars. So
have you ever stayed at the Trump Hotel, Mr. Raskin?
Excuse no, and I never would stay at a Trump hotel. I've got too much self-respect and concern for hygiene. So, but in any event, Mr. Donald, you're totally wrong about what the Foreign Emoluments Clause stands for. Abraham Lincoln was given 2 elephant tusks by the king of Siam during the Civil War, and he liked them very much. He wanted to keep them, but he went to Congress, which is what every other president did before and every president did since, right up until Donald Trump. And he asked whether he could keep the tusks. And Congress, though they loved Honest Abe, said, no, you can't keep them. I mean, John F. Kennedy was offered citizenship by the people of Ireland because they loved him so much, and he refused to take it, saying that even though it didn't violate the letter of the Emoluments Clause, it violated the spirit of the Emoluments Clause. And Donald Trump converted the presidency into an instrument for self-enrichment. He raked in millions of dollars from the most corrupt governments on earth, who came in with specific favors that we document in our report that they got from Donald Trump. I beseech my colleagues, I will read any book, any magazine, any speech you've given that you want me to read. Read this report and come back and tell me if you think Donald Trump did the right thing in converting the White House into a for-profit operation. No other president in American history has come anywhere close. And you ask why he's so determined to stay in office that he would unleash violence against his own vice president, the brother of your colleague, of our colleague. Why would he do that? It's because it was a money-making operation, and it was a great business grift for a guy who went bankrupt several times. And yet, out of some misguided partisan loyalty, you're going to stick with him. I don't even know why you stick with him. He was a Democrat longer than he was a Republican. He wanted to run for president on the Reform Party. You guys have been taken over by an absolute con man. And now you're acting like members of a religious cult who don't even remember how you got in the first place. We say return the profits, Donald Trump, $7.8 million. I've got a letter, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to share with you telling Donald Trump to return these $7.8 million. It's a small fraction of what he raked in. We want to know about the other 2 years in office. We want to know about the other businesses, not just those 4 that we were able to get information on. And we want to know about every country on earth, not just the 20 autocracies and dictatorships that we found. This is our government. This is our Constitution. And we're going to stand up for it against Donald Trump and anybody who follows him to the path of oblivion. Abraham Lincoln started your party as a third party to replace the Whigs because they wouldn't take a moral stand against slavery. It was a pro-freedom, anti-slavery, pro-union, pro-honesty party. And your party has been reduced to a corrupt, authoritarian cult of personality. And everybody does whatever Donald Trump tells them to do, which is what we're doing here today with this stupid attempt to hold Hunter Biden in contempt when he has come forward to say he will testify and give you everything you want, as the chairman of the committee repeatedly offered in public. So forgive my outrage and indignation, but enough is enough. Let's get back to the business